The Arizona sun hammered down on Interstate 10 like a blowtorch, turning the asphalt into shimmering waves of heat that danced across the horizon. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in late July, and the temperature gauge at the Desert Star gas station on the outskirts of Phoenix read 114 degrees Fahrenheit. The kind of heat that made breathing feel like inhaling fire, that turned steering wheels into branding irons, that drove most sensible people indoors to the refuge of air conditioning. But Marcus "Steel" Thompson wasn't most people. At 45 years old, with silver threading through his dark hair and a weathered face that told stories of 2 tours in Afghanistan, Marcus sat astride his 2019 Harley-Davidson Road King, the chrome gleaming despite the dust that clung to everything in this part of Arizona. His leather vest bore the patches of the Desert Riders MC, a phoenix rising from flames, stitched in orange and red thread across the back, with Phoenix Chapter curved beneath it. The vest also carried other markers, a purple heart patch, an American flag, and the words "President" on a rocker above his heart. Behind him, 3 more motorcycles rumbled into the gas station, their engines creating a symphony of mechanical thunder that momentarily drowned out the country music bleeding from the station's outdoor speakers. "Hotter than Satan's armpit out here," Danny Wrench Sullivan announced, pulling his bike alongside Marcus's. At 38, Danny was the club's mechanic, a stocky man with forearms covered in grease stains that no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. His reddish beard was braided into 2 points, and his blue eyes squinted against the brutal sunlight. "My ass is literally melting to this seat." Victor Hawk Martinez laughed as he dismounted his Indian Scout. Victor was the youngest of the group at 32, a former EMT with quick hands and a quicker smile. His Latino heritage showed in his olive skin, which somehow managed to tan even darker in the relentless Arizona sun, and his black hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. "This is nothing, man. Last summer I watched a thermometer hit 122. Now that was hot." "You boys need to hydrate," Rachel Phoenix Carter said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being heard. At 41, Rachel was the club's only female member, a former trauma nurse with sharp green eyes and auburn hair cut in a practical bob. She'd earned her road name not from the city, but from how she'd risen from the ashes of her own personal tragedy, the loss of her husband and daughter in a drunk driving accident 5 years ago. The Desert Riders had become her family, and she protected that family fiercely. "Seriously, we've still got 40 miles to the meetup spot." Marcus swung his leg over his bike and headed toward the station's entrance. 5-minute break. Water, bathroom, then we roll. Tim and the others are probably already at Copper Canyon. The Desert Star gas station was the kind of place that existed solely because of its location. The last stop for travelers heading deeper into the desert, or the first oasis for those coming from the endless brown expanse of scrubland and saguaro cacti. The building was a sun-bleached structure with a red roof, flanked by ancient gas pumps that had been updated sometime in the early 2000s. A hand-painted sign advertised cold beer and ice, both essential commodities in this climate. As Marcus walked toward the entrance, his boots crunching on the gravel lot, he noticed details with the trained eye of someone who'd learned to read environments for danger. A pickup truck with a dented fender parked at the far end of the lot. An elderly couple in a Buick LeSabre filling up at pump 3. A trucker sleeping in the cab of his semi, mouth open, ball cap pulled low over his eyes. And a small figure standing near the air pump, partially hidden behind a rusted ice machine. Marcus slowed his stride. The figure was a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with sandy blonde hair matted with sweat and dirt. He wore jeans that were too big, held up by a belt cinched to its last hole, and a faded Phoenix Suns t-shirt with a tear along the hem. But it was the boy's eyes that stopped Marcus in his tracks. wide, red-rimmed, filled with a desperate fear that Marcus had seen before in war zones, in the faces of children caught in conflicts they didn't understand. The boy was staring directly at him. "Hey, Steele, you coming?" Danny called from behind him. Marcus held up a hand, his attention locked on the child. Slowly, carefully, he altered his path to move closer to the boy, keeping his movements non-threatening. He'd learned long ago that scared kids were like scared animals. Sudden movements only made things worse. "Hey there, buddy," Marcus said softly, crouching down to bring himself closer to the boy's eye level. Even at a distance of about 10 feet, he could see the child trembling. "You okay?" For a long moment, the boy said nothing. His hands were clenched into small fists at his sides, and his chest was rising and falling rapidly. Then, with a movement so sudden it startled Marcus, the boy rushed forward, closing the distance between them in 3 quick steps. "Please," the boy whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, you have to arrest me." Marcus blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What? You're police, right?" The boy looked up at Marcus's vest, at the patches and symbols, his young face desperate and hopeful. "Please, I need you to arrest me. I'll go to jail. I don't care. Just, please." By now, the other riders had noticed the interaction and had moved closer. Rachel was the first to reach them, her nurse's instincts overriding everything else. She knelt beside Marcus, her eyes scanning the boy with professional efficiency. "Sweetheart, we're not police," Rachel said gently. "We're just people who ride motorcycles together. What's your name?" The boy's face crumpled, hope draining from his features like water through a sieve. His legs seemed to give out, and he would have collapsed if Rachel hadn't caught him, strong arms pulling him into a protective embrace. And then the boy was crying, great, heaving sobs that shook his small frame. The kind of crying that spoke of exhaustion and terror and relief, all mixed together. Hey, it's okay," Rachel murmured, looking over the boy's head at Marcus with alarm. "You're safe. Whatever it is, you're safe right now." Danny and Victor had formed a loose semicircle around them, their casual demeanor replaced with something harder, more alert. Marcus recognized the shift. They'd all felt it, that instinctive response when something was very, very wrong. "What's your name, son?" Marcus asked again, his voice gentle but firm. The boy pulled back slightly from Rachel, wiping his nose on the back of his hand. "Ethan," he managed between gasps. "Ethan Parker." "Okay, Ethan, I'm Marcus." "This is Rachel, Danny, and Victor." Marcus gestured to each in turn. "Can you tell us why you wanted to be arrested?" Ethan's eyes darted toward the road, toward the direction of traffic heading back into Phoenix, and Marcus saw fear spike in those young eyes again. "He'll find me," Ethan whispered. "If I'm not arrested, he'll find me and take me back, and then he'll hurt Mom again." Rachel's jaw tightened. Marcus saw her hands, still on Ethan's shoulders, flex slightly. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. "Who will hurt your mom, Ethan?" "Craig. My stepdad." Ethan's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "He gets mad. Real mad. And when he gets mad, he hits. He hit Mom this morning because breakfast was cold, and I tried to stop him, and he..." The boy pulled up the hem of his t-shirt, and Marcus felt rage flood through him like molten steel. Across Ethan's ribs were bruises, dark purple and yellow, some fresh and some clearly days old. There were also what looked like belt marks, angry red welts that formed parallel lines across his small back. "Jesus Christ," Danny breathed. Victor had pulled out his phone and was already stepping away, his voice low as he started making a call. Marcus knew he was calling 911. This was beyond anything they could handle on their own, beyond anything they should try to handle. "Ethan, how did you get here?" Rachel asked, her voice remarkably steady, despite the fury Marcus could see building behind her eyes. "Does your mom know where you are?" Ethan shook his head. "Craig left to get beer. Mom was sleeping. He hit her pretty hard this time. I just ran. I've been walking for a long time. I saw you guys pulling in and I thought..." He looked down at his worn sneakers. "I thought if I was in jail, I'd be safe. And maybe they'd help Mom too." Marcus stood slowly, his mind already running through possibilities, through protocols, through the maze of what needed to happen next. He'd dealt with situations like this before, but never quite this direct. Never with a child literally begging to be taken away from his home. "Ethan, you did the right thing," Marcus said firmly. "The absolutely right thing. We're going to help you and we're going to help your mum. But you're not going to jail, buddy. You haven't done anything wrong." "But Craig said..." Ethan started. "Craig is wrong," Rachel interrupted, her voice sharp. Then softer. "Whatever he told you, whatever he made you believe, he's wrong. You're the victim here, sweetheart, not the criminal." Victor returned, sliding his phone back into his pocket. "Police and paramedics are on the way. ETA about 6 minutes. I also called Sarah." Marcus nodded. Sarah Mitchell was a detective with Phoenix PD's Family Protection Unit and also a friend. She'd helped the Desert Riders with several charity events over the years, including their annual toy drive for kids in foster care. If anyone could navigate this situation properly, it was her. "Ethan, some people are going to come to help," Marcus explained, crouching back down. "Police officers and maybe a doctor or nurse. They're going to ask you questions and they're going to make sure you're not hurt anywhere else. Is that okay?" Ethan's eyes widened with panic. "They're going to send me back. They're going to make me go home." "No," Rachel said firmly, still holding the boy. "No, honey, that's not how this works. When someone hurts a child, the police's job is to protect that child. They're not going to send you back to someone who hurt you." "But where will I go?" Ethan's voice cracked again, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. "What about Mom? He'll kill her if I'm not there. He said he would. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd kill her." Marcus felt something crystallize inside him, a determination that went beyond law, beyond protocol. He'd seen enough evil in his life, had stood by and watched too many innocents suffer because of red tape and jurisdictional bullshit. Not this time. Not this kid. "Ethan, I want you to listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "We're not going anywhere. We're going to stay right here with you until the police come, and then we're going to make sure they understand everything. And your mom, we're going to make sure someone checks on her right away. Do you know your address?" Ethan nodded, rattling off an address on the south side of Phoenix, in an area Marcus knew was rough. High crime, low income, the kind of neighborhood where people learn not to hear screaming through the walls. Victor was back on his phone, relaying the address to someone. When he finished the call, he looked at Marcus. "Sarah's contacting patrol units near that location now. They'll do a welfare check." The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing closer. Ethan tensed, and Rachel pulled him a little closer. "Remember, they're here to help," she said softly. "And we're not leaving you, okay?" Within minutes, the gas station had transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. 2 patrol cars arrived first, followed by an ambulance. Officers established a perimeter while paramedics approached with their equipment. Marcus stepped forward, identifying himself and the other riders, explaining how they'd found Ethan. The senior officer, a weathered man in his 50s named Sergeant Rodriguez, listened intently, taking notes. His expression grew grimmer with each detail. "We've got units en route to the address you provided," Rodriguez said. "They'll locate the mother and assess the situation. Meanwhile, this boy needs to be examined at the hospital." "I want to go with him," Rachel said, her tone brooking no argument. "I'm a nurse, and he knows me now. He needs a familiar face." Rodriguez looked like he wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "You can ride in the ambulance, but once we're at the hospital, Child Protective Services will take over." "Fine," Rachel said. She turned to Ethan, who was now sitting on the back bumper of the ambulance, a female paramedic gently checking his vital signs. "Ethan, I'm going to come with you to the hospital, okay? These nice people need to make sure you're not hurt anywhere else, and then we're going to figure out what happens next. Will you really stay? Ethan asked, his voice small. I promise, Rachel said. As the ambulance prepared to leave, Marcus pulled Rachel aside. Keep us updated, and Rach, don't let them bully you. That kid needs someone in his corner. I know, Rachel said. Her green eyes were bright with barely suppressed fury. That son of a bitch Craig Donovan has no idea what's coming for him. The ambulance pulled away, lights flashing but sirens silent, carrying Ethan toward whatever came next. Marcus watched it go, then turned to find Danny and Victor standing beside their bikes, their expressions matching his own feelings. We can't just ride away from this, Danny said flatly. No, Marcus agreed. We can't. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Mitchell. Got your message. At the hospital now. This is bad, Marcus. Real bad. The mother's being transported too. Neighbor heard the commotion and called it in. Severe injuries. And the stepfather's in the wind. Marcus read the text aloud to the others. Victor cursed under his breath. Danny's hands clenched into fists. So what do we do? Victor asked. Marcus looked at his brothers, at these men and women who'd become his family after the military had spit him out with PTSD and survivor's guilt. They'd saved him, given him purpose, shown him that family wasn't about blood. It was about the people who stood beside you when everything went to hell. We do what we always do, Marcus said quietly. We protect our own. And that kid? He's one of ours now. Phoenix General Hospital's emergency room on a Saturday evening was controlled pandemonium. The waiting area was filled with people nursing various injuries and ailments. A construction worker with a possible broken arm, a woman with her hand wrapped in a bloody towel, a toddler with a fever high enough that his mother's face was tight with worry. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, clinical glow that seemed to strip away any softness, any comfort. Marcus pushed through the double doors marked Authorized Personnel Only, his vest drawing looks from nurses and orderlies, but none of them challenged him. He'd learned long ago that confidence and purpose could get you into places where credentials couldn't. He found Rachel in a consultation room on the 3rd floor, sitting beside a hospital bed where Ethan lay curled on his side, his small body dwarfed by the white sheets and sterile surroundings. Hey, Marcus said softly, knocking on the doorframe, though the door was already open. Rachel looked up, relief crossing her face. He finally fell asleep about 20 minutes ago. They gave him something for the pain. Marcus stepped inside, keeping his movements quiet. Up close, with better lighting, he could see more evidence of what Ethan had endured. There were fingerprint bruises on his upper arms, like someone had grabbed him too hard, too many times. A fading black eye that had turned yellow-green with age, split knuckles on his right hand, probably from trying to defend himself or his mother. How bad? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Rachel's expression hardened. 3 cracked ribs, extensive bruising across his back, sides, and upper legs. Burns on his hands that the doctor says are consistent with being forced to touch a hot stove or iron. Signs of chronic malnutrition. He's about 15 pounds underweight for his age and height. She paused, her voice dropping. And the psychologist who examined him says there are strong indicators of severe emotional trauma. He flinches at sudden movements. He apologized to the nurse when she had to give him an IV, like he thought he'd done something wrong by needing medical care. Marcus felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. The mother? Linda Parker, 34 years old. She's in surgery right now. Ruptured spleen, broken jaw, fractured orbital bone, multiple contusions. Rachel's hands were shaking slightly, and she clasped them together to still them. The surgeon said that if the neighbor hadn't called 911 when she did, Linda might not have made it. The internal bleeding was that severe. Jesus, Marcus breathed. And the stepfather? Craig Donovan? Still no sign of him. Sarah has units canvassing the area, checking known associates, but so far it's like he vanished into thin air. Rachel looked down at Ethan's sleeping form. That boy was so brave, Marcus. You should have heard him during the examination. He answered every question, even the hard ones. He told them everything. How long the abuse had been going on, what triggered Craig's rages, how his mom tried to protect him. How long? Marcus asked, though again, he wasn't certain he wanted the answer. 2 years, since Craig moved in with them after he and Linda got married. Rachel's voice was hollow. Ethan said it started small, yelling, pushing, breaking things. Then it escalated. Craig would come home drunk and look for reasons to be angry. If dinner was wrong, if the apartment was too messy or too clean, if Ethan made noise while watching TV. The boy said he tried to be perfect, tried to be invisible, but it was never enough. Marcus pulled a chair over and sat down heavily. His leg, the one that had taken shrapnel in Kandahar, ached. It always did when he was stressed. What happens now with Ethan? CPS is involved. A caseworker named Mrs. Patricia Henderson will be here within the hour to assess the situation. Rachel glanced at her watch. Since Linda is hospitalized and Craig is in the wind, Ethan will likely go into emergency foster care tonight. Like hell he will, Marcus said, the words out before he'd fully thought them through. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Marcus, no, listen to me. Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense, but quiet enough not to wake Ethan. You know what foster care is like. We've worked with those kids at the toy drives. Hell, Victor was in the system for 3 years as a teenager. It's overcrowded, underfunded, and this kid has been through enough without being dumped into a stranger's home tonight. What are you suggesting? Rachel asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. I'm suggesting that we, the club, provide temporary shelter. We have resources. My house has 3 bedrooms, and only one of them is being used. Victor's got space. Danny's got space. Hell, Tim Rodriguez has that big place out in Tembo, and he's got kids of his own. Marcus was talking faster now, the idea taking shape as he spoke. We can set up a rotation, make sure someone's always available, and you're a nurse, so you can handle any medical needs. We can... Marcus, CPS doesn't just hand kids over to random bikers, Rachel interrupted, but there was a thoughtful look in her eyes now. There are protocols, background checks, home inspections. I know that, but we've got clean records. Most of us have military backgrounds, which counts for something, and Sarah can vouch for us. She knows we're not some criminal outfit. Marcus looked at Ethan's sleeping face, at the exhaustion and pain etched there, even in rest. This kid came to us, Rach. Out of everyone at that gas station, everyone on that road, he chose to ask us for help. Doesn't that mean something? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. It means everything, which is why we can't screw this up. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Proper channels, proper procedures. Agreed? Agreed, Marcus said. The door opened, and a woman in her mid-50s entered, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression of professional exhaustion. She had grey hair pulled back in a neat bun, glasses on a chain around her neck, and the kind of sensible shoes that suggested long hours on her feet. I'm Patricia Henderson, Child Protective Services, she announced, then paused as she took in Marcus's appearance, the leather vest, the patches, the general air of someone who didn't quite belong in a hospital consultation room. And you are? Marcus Thompson. I'm one of the people who found Ethan at the gas station. Marcus stood, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Patricia shook it. I see. And you're still here because? Patricia's tone wasn't hostile exactly, but it carried the weariness of someone who'd seen too many complications, too many people who made her job harder. Because that boy trusts us, Marcus said simply, and because we want to help. Patricia's expression softened slightly. She glanced at Rachel. You're the nurse who rode in the ambulance. Rachel Carter, yes. A trauma nurse, 15 years of experience. Rachel stood as well. Mrs. Henderson, I know you probably see a lot of people who want to insert themselves into situations like this, but I promise you, we're not trying to complicate things. We just want to make sure Ethan's taken care of. I appreciate that, Patricia said, and she sounded like she meant it. But the reality is that Ethan Parker needs to be placed in emergency foster care tonight. His mother is in critical condition and won't be released for at least a week, possibly longer. His stepfather is currently wanted by the police for felony assault and child abuse. The boy has no other family in the area. His grandparents are deceased, and Linda Parker's sister lives in Oregon and isn't in a position to take him. What about us? Marcus asked. Patricia blinked. Excuse me? What about us? The Desert Riders MC. We can provide temporary emergency care. Patricia's expression shifted from surprise to skeptical. Mr. Thompson, I'm sure you mean well, but CPS doesn't typically place children with motorcycle clubs. We're not just a motorcycle club, Marcus said, keeping his voice level. We're a registered non-profit organization. We run charity events. We work with veterans organizations. We've been active in this community for 8 years. We have members with clean backgrounds, stable jobs, and homes that could easily accommodate a child. And more importantly, we're the people that Boy turned to when he was in danger. He thought you were police officers, Patricia pointed out. He thought we were people who could help him, Marcus countered, and he was right. Patricia looked between Marcus and Rachel, then down at Ethan's sleeping form. When she spoke again, her voice was gentler. Look, I understand you care about this child. That's admirable. But there are procedures, legal requirements. Even if I wanted to place him with you, and I'm not saying I do, it would require background checks, home inspections, approval from my supervisor. That takes time, usually several days. And in the meantime, Rachel asked, where does he go? Patricia hesitated. I have a foster family on standby, the Johnsons. They're good people, experienced with traumatized children. As if summoned by the conversation, Ethan stirred. His eyes opened slowly, confusion crossing his face as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Then his gaze found Rachel, and relief flooded his features. You stayed, he whispered. I promised I would, Rachel said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Sleepy and sore. Ethan's attention shifted to Marcus, and a small smile appeared. You came too. Wouldn't be anywhere else, buddy, Marcus said. Ethan's smile faded as he noticed Patricia. His body tensed, that familiar fear creeping back into his eyes. Who are you? Patricia's professional demeanor softened as she approached the bed. Hi, Ethan. My name is Patricia Henderson. I work for an organization that helps keep kids safe. Your new friends here have told me a lot about how brave you've been today. Where's my mom? Ethan asked, his voice small. Is she okay? Rachel exchanged a glance with Marcus before answering. Your mom is in the hospital in a different part of the building. She's being taken care of by doctors, just like you were. She's going to need some time to get better. Because of Craig, Ethan said flatly. It wasn't a question. Yes, Rachel said, because lying to him would only make things worse. Because of Craig. Where am I supposed to go? Ethan looked between the adults, and Marcus saw the fear there, the uncertainty of a child whose entire world had just been upended. Can I stay with you? He asked Rachel. Or with him? He pointed at Marcus. Patricia stepped in before either could answer. Ethan, I know you've had a really scary day, and I know these people helped you when you needed it. But for tonight, you're going to go stay with a family who takes care of kids whose parents need a little time to get better. They're called the Johnsons, and they have a nice house with a spare bedroom just for you. No, Ethan said, and his voice cracked. No, please. I don't know them. I know Rachel and Marcus. Please don't make me go somewhere I don't know anyone. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. He'd heard that same desperate plea before, in different words, in different languages, from children in Afghan villages when their parents were killed or taken. He'd had to walk away from those pleas, bound by military protocols and orders he couldn't disobey. But he wasn't in the military anymore. He didn't answer to those chains of command. Mrs. Henderson, Marcus said quietly, give me 48 hours. Patricia turned to him, eyebrows raised. I'm sorry? 48 hours. Let me and my club members submit to whatever background checks you need. Inspect our homes. Talk to our employers, our references, whoever you need to talk to. Run every test, every verification you want. Marcus's voice was steady, determined. If everything checks out, and it will, then let Ethan stay with us temporarily until his mother recovers or you find a more permanent solution. Mr. Thompson, I can't just... Yes, you can, Marcus interrupted, then softened his tone. Look, I get it. You have rules, procedures, and you're trying to protect this kid, but sometimes the system gets in the way of what's actually best for the child. Ethan has been through hell. He's scared, he's hurting, and he's in a place where he doesn't know if he can trust adults anymore. But for some reason, he trusts us. Isn't that worth something? Patricia was quiet for a long moment, her gaze moving from Marcus to Rachel to Ethan. The boy was watching her with those large, hopeful eyes, silently pleading. Finally, Patricia sighed. I could lose my job for this. But you won't, Rachel said quickly. Because we're going to follow every rule, meet every requirement, and document everything. I'll personally ensure that Ethan gets his medication on time, attends all his follow-up appointments, and receives any counseling he needs. Patricia pulled out her tablet, tapping through several screens. Okay, here's what I can do. I can authorize a 72-hour emergency placement with you, Mr. Thompson, pending the background check and home inspection. During that time, Ethan cannot be left alone with anyone who hasn't been cleared, which means Ms. Carter, or another club member with a clean record, needs to be present at all times. You'll need to bring Ethan back to the hospital tomorrow for a follow-up examination. And if Detective Mitchell is willing to vouch for you, that will carry weight with my supervisor. Sarah will vouch for us, Marcus said with confidence. What do you need from me right now? Patricia spent the next 20 minutes gathering information, taking photos of Marcus's driver's license, recording his address and employment details. She explained the rules and restrictions, the penalties for violations, the expectations for Ethan's care. Marcus listened carefully, committing every detail to memory. When Patricia finally left, promising to send the official paperwork within an hour, Marcus turned to find Ethan sitting up in bed, eyes wide with disbelief. I get to stay with you? Ethan asked. For a little while, yeah, Marcus said. My place isn't fancy, but it's got a spare bedroom, and I make pretty decent pancakes for breakfast. For the first time since they'd met him, Ethan smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. Rachel was on her phone, texting rapidly. I'm letting the others know. Danny's asking if we need him to pick up anything for Ethan. Clothes, toiletries, whatever. Tell him yes to all of it, Marcus said. Kid can't wear hospital clothes indefinitely. His own phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Mum's out of surgery. Stable but critical. Sarah's here and wants to talk to you. I need to go speak with Sarah and get an update, Marcus told Rachel. Can you stay with Ethan while they process his discharge? Of course, Rachel said. She looked at Ethan. How do you feel about getting out of here, sweetheart? Going somewhere that's not a hospital? I feel good about it, Ethan said quietly. Then, hesitantly, can I see my mum first? just to make sure she's really okay. Rachel and Marcus exchanged glances. Finally, Rachel nodded. "Let me check with the doctors. Your mom is in recovery right now and she's sleeping. But maybe, if the nurses say it's okay, we can at least let you see her for a minute. Would that help?" Ethan nodded vigorously. 20 minutes later, a nurse led them through the post-surgical wing to a private recovery room. Marcus hung back, letting Rachel and Ethan approach the bed while he stood near the doorway, giving them space. Linda Parker looked small and fragile against the white hospital sheets, her face a mass of bruises and bandages. An IV drip fed into her arm, and monitors beeped rhythmically beside her bed. Her breathing was steady but shallow, aided by oxygen tubes in her nose. "Mom," Ethan whispered, reaching out to touch her hand. His fingers were trembling. Linda's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening as she recognized her son. "Ethan," she managed through her damaged jaw. The word was slurred, but the emotion behind it was crystal clear. "I'm okay, Mom," Ethan said, tears streaming down his face. "I'm okay. These people helped me. They're going to help you too." Linda's gaze shifted past Ethan to Rachel, then to Marcus in the doorway. A question formed in her eyes. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Marcus Thompson. Your son found me and some friends today. He's safe and he's going to be taken care of while you recover." Marcus kept his voice gentle. "The police are looking for Craig. He's not going to hurt either of you again." Something complicated crossed Linda's face. Relief, fear, guilt, gratitude all mixed together. She squeezed Ethan's hand with what little strength she had. "Be good," Linda whispered to her son. "Be good boy." "I will, Mom. I promise," Ethan said. "You just focus on getting better, okay?" The nurse indicated that visiting time was over, that Linda needed rest. Ethan reluctantly let go of his mother's hand, allowing Rachel to guide him out of the room. Marcus waited until they were in the hallway before pulling out his phone. A text from Sarah. "Need to talk. Break room on 4th floor. Now." Marcus found the break room easily enough. A small space with vending machines, uncomfortable plastic chairs, and the ever-present smell of burnt coffee. Sarah Mitchell was waiting for him, still in her detective's blazer despite the heat, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. "Sarah," Marcus said in greeting. "Sit down, Marcus," Sarah said, and there was something in her tone that made his stomach tighten. "We need to talk about Craig Donovan." Marcus sat. "You found him?" "No. But we've learned some things that make this situation even more complicated than it already is." Sarah pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens until she found what she was looking for. "Craig Allen Donovan, age 38. Prior arrests for domestic violence, assault, drunk and disorderly. Did 2 stretches in county jail, 1 for beating up an ex-girlfriend badly enough to put her in ICU. He and Linda Parker got married 2 years ago in a quickie ceremony in Las Vegas." "Sounds like a real prince," Marcus said dryly. "It gets better," Sarah said grimly. "We ran Donovan's name through the database. Turns out he's got connections to the Iron Fists MC." Marcus's blood ran cold. The Iron Fists were a notorious 1%er club, the kind of motorcycle gang that gave all bikers a bad name. They ran drugs, guns, and protection rackets throughout Arizona. They were violent, territorial, and they didn't appreciate anyone messing with their members or associates. "How connected?" Marcus asked. "He's not a patched member, but he's been seen at their clubhouse multiple times. One of our informants says Donovan does odd jobs for them, enforcement, collection, that sort of thing." Sarah met Marcus's eyes. "If the Iron Fists find out that Desert Riders are harboring the kid of someone they consider one of theirs, they'll retaliate," Marcus finished. "Hell, Marcus, I'm not telling you this to scare you off from helping Ethan. God knows that kid needs someone in his corner, but you need to know what you're potentially getting into." Sarah's expression was serious. "If Donovan reaches out to the Iron Fists for help, if they decide to make this their problem, let them try," Marcus said, his voice hard. "We're not backing down. That kid asked us for help, and we're going to give it to him. If the Iron Fists have a problem with that, they can bring it up with me directly." Sarah smiled slightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I figured you'd say that, which is why I've already put in a request for increased patrol units in your neighborhood and near any Desert Riders properties. It's not much, but it's something." "Thank you," Marcus said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said. "We've still got to find Donovan before he either skips town or does something stupid. And we need to build a case strong enough to put him away for a long time, which means getting Linda and Ethan to testify when they're ready." "They'll testify," Marcus said with certainty. "Ethan's already told medical staff everything. Linda will too, once she's recovered enough." "I hope you're right," Sarah said. She stood gathering her things. "Keep me updated on Ethan's status. And Marcus, watch your back. I've got a bad feeling about this." "Noted," Marcus said. As Sarah left, he pulled out his phone and sent a group text to the Desert Riders Corps members. "Club meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. my place. Mandatory attendance. We've got a situation." The responses came in quickly. "Tim Rodriguez, I'll be there. Danny, copy that. Victor, see you then. Rachel, wouldn't miss it." Marcus pocketed his phone and headed back to find Rachel and Ethan. Whatever was coming, whatever complications arose from this decision, he was committed now. They all were. As he walked through the hospital corridors, Marcus thought about the military saying he'd learned years ago. No man left behind. It had applied to soldiers, to brothers in arms, but it applied here too. Ethan Parker was one of theirs now, whether the system acknowledged it or not, and the Desert Riders protected their own. The Sunday morning sun was already brutal by 9:30 a.m., turning Marcus's backyard into a furnace, despite the shade provided by the ancient cottonwood tree that dominated one corner of his property. His house was a modest, single-story ranch-style home in the Levain neighborhood, with faded blue siding and a detached garage that had been converted into a workshop. It was nothing special, but it was paid off. It was his, and it had enough space to host club meetings when the weather drove them out of the garage. Marcus stood on his back patio, watching as motorcycles rolled up his driveway one by one. Tim Rodriguez arrived first, his road glide gleaming despite the dust that coated everything in Phoenix. Tim was 52, a former Marine with salt and pepper hair and a scar running down his left forearm from a knife fight in Fallujah. He ran a successful construction business and had 3 kids of his own. "Morning, Prez," Tim said, using Marcus's club title. "How's the kid?" "Still sleeping. Rachel's inside with him." Marcus gestured toward the house. "He had nightmares last night, woke up screaming around 3 a.m. Tim winced. "Poor kid. My youngest did that too after the car accident. Took months before he slept through the night again." Danny and Victor arrived together, followed by the rest of the Corps membership, 12 people in total, ranging in age from 28 to 55, each with their own story of how they'd found their way to the Desert Riders. Some were veterans like Marcus and Tim. Others were nurses, mechanics, teachers, and construction workers. What united them was a shared love of riding and a commitment to the club's principles: honor, loyalty, and service. Once everyone had settled into the mismatched collection of lawn chairs and benches Marcus had scattered around the patio, he called the meeting to order. "All right, listen up," Marcus began, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone used to commanding attention. "By now, you've all heard about what happened yesterday. I'm going to give you the full story, and then we're going to discuss what it means for the club." He told them everything. The encounter at the gas station, Ethan's desperate plea, the extent of the abuse, Linda Parker's hospitalization, and Craig Donovan's connections to the Iron Fists MC. He watched his brothers and sisters react, saw anger and concern and determination cross their faces. When he finished, Tim was the first to speak. "So we're potentially starting a war with the Iron Fists over a kid we just met. We're protecting a child who asked us for help," Marcus corrected. "If the Iron Fists have a problem with that, it says more about them than it does about us." "I'm not arguing against helping the kid," Tim clarified. "I'm just making sure we all understand what we're getting into. The Iron Fists don't play nice. If they decide we've disrespected them or interfered in their business, then we handle it," Rachel said firmly from the doorway. She'd apparently been listening from inside. "I didn't become a nurse to turn away from people who need help. And I didn't join this club to hide when things get difficult." A woman named Jennifer Hawk Morrison spoke up. No relation to Victor, though they shared the same road name's route. Jennifer was 43, a high school teacher with short black hair and a sleeve of tattoos depicting various birds of prey. "What's our legal exposure here? If CPS finds out about the Iron Fist connection, will they pull Ethan from Marcus's care?" "Possibly," Marcus admitted. "Which is why we need to be smart about this. No direct confrontations unless absolutely necessary. We document everything. We follow every rule CPS gave us, and we coordinate with Sarah Mitchell at every step." "What about the kid's mother?" This from Kevin Stitch Patterson, a 40-year-old trauma surgeon who joined the club 3 years ago. "What's her prognosis?" "She's stable, but critical. She'll be hospitalized for at least a week, probably longer. After that, she'll need significant recovery time." Marcus paused. "But here's the thing. Even when she's physically healed, she's going to need support. A safe place to live, protection from Donovan, probably counseling for trauma. We should be thinking about how to help her too." "Are you suggesting we extend our protection to the mother as well?" Tim asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I am," Marcus said. "Ethan and Linda are a package deal. We can't help one without helping the other." Danny leaned forward in his chair. "All right, so let's talk logistics. Marcus has Ethan for the next 72 hours, pending the CPS inspection and background check. What happens after that?" "If everything checks out, we might be able to extend the temporary placement," Marcus said. "But we need contingency plans. If CPS decides I'm not suitable, we need another club member ready to step up. We need a rotation of who's available to help with childcare, transportation, whatever Ethan needs." "I can help with transportation," Jennifer offered. "I'm off work for summer break, so my schedule is flexible." "I can cover any medical needs," Kevin added. "And I've got connections to child psychologists at the hospital. Kids going to need therapy." Victor raised his hand. "I've been doing some digging into Donovan's associates. I've got a friend who's got an ear to the ground in the criminal world. I'll see what I can learn about where Donovan might have gone to ground." "Be careful," Marcus warned. "If word gets back to the Iron Fists that we're actively looking for him." "I'll be discreet," Victor promised. Rachel stepped fully outside, closing the screen door behind her. "Ethan's still asleep, but he should wake up soon. When he does, he's going to have questions. He's going to want to know what happens next, whether he can stay, whether his mom will be okay. We need to have answers ready." "Tell him the truth," Tim said. "Kids can handle more than we give them credit for. Lies just make things worse." "Agreed," Marcus said. "But we frame it in a way that doesn't terrify him. He knows his mom is in the hospital. He knows Craig is dangerous. What he needs to know is that he's safe, that we're handling things, that he doesn't have to be scared." The sound of the screen door opening again made them all turn. Ethan stood in the doorway wearing borrowed clothes, a t-shirt and shorts that Danny had picked up from Target the previous night. They were a little too big, but clean. The boy's hair was mussed from sleep and he blinked against the bright sunlight. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Okay, I guess." Ethan's gaze traveled over the assembled bikers, taking in their leather vests, their patches, their collective presence. "Are all these people Are they your club? They are, Marcus confirmed. Want to meet them? Ethan nodded slowly, stepping out onto the patio. Rachel moved to stand beside him, a protective hand on his shoulder. Marcus made the introductions one by one, keeping it simple, names and a brief detail about each person. Tim, who built houses, Danny, who fixed motorcycles, Jennifer, who taught high school, Kevin, who was a doctor. As each person was introduced, they offered Ethan a smile or a friendly wave, keeping their demeanor warm but not overwhelming. "So you're all going to help me?" Ethan asked when the introductions were complete. His voice was small, uncertain, like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. "That's right," Marcus said. "We're all going to help you and your mom." "Why?" Ethan asked, and the question held genuine confusion. "You don't even know us." It was Jennifer who answered, her voice soft. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. And they didn't. Because you were brave enough to ask for help when you needed it. And because that's what family does. They help each other." "But you're not my family," Ethan said. "Not by blood," Marcus agreed. "But family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who choose to stand beside you when things are hard. And we're choosing to stand beside you, Ethan, if you'll let us." Ethan's eyes welled up with tears. He scrubbed at them with the back of his hand, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to cry all the time." "Hey, no," Rachel said firmly, crouching down to his level. "You cry as much as you need to. You've been through something terrible, and crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." The meeting continued, but with a lighter tone now. Jennifer offered to take Ethan inside and make him breakfast. Kevin mentioned he'd brought some books that his own kids had enjoyed at Ethan's age. The conversation shifted from threat assessment and logistics to more normal concerns, making sure Ethan had everything he needed, planning activities to keep him occupied, discussing school enrollment if this situation became long-term. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Got a hit on Donovan's truck. Spotted at a motel off I-17 near Black Canyon City. Units are moving in now. We'll update." Marcus read the text aloud to the group. Tim whistled low. "That's about 40 miles north of here. He's running." "Or regrouping," Victor said darkly. "Black Canyon City is Iron Fist's territory. Either way, once they pick him up, this situation becomes a lot more stable," Danny pointed out. "He can't come after Ethan or Linda if he's in custody." Another text from Sarah. "Suspect not at location. Truck found abandoned. Motel clerk says Donovan checked out this morning, paid cash. No indication where he went next." Marcus cursed under his breath. "He's smarter than we gave him credit for." "Or someone's helping him," Tim said. "If the Iron Fists are involved, they've got resources, safe houses, false IDs, cash. They could hide him indefinitely. Which means we operate under the assumption that he's still a threat," Marcus said. "Increase security at all club members' homes. No one goes anywhere alone, and Ethan doesn't leave my sight unless he's with Rachel or another cleared member." "I'll reach out to some friends in law enforcement," Kevin offered. "See if anyone's heard anything through unofficial channels." The meeting broke up around noon, with various members volunteering for different tasks: surveillance, supply runs, liaison work with CPS and the hospital. As people began to leave, Marcus pulled Tim aside. "I need you to be honest with me," Marcus said quietly. "Do you think I'm making a mistake, putting the club at risk for this kid?" Tim was quiet for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful. "You remember what you told me when I was thinking about leaving the club 2 years ago? When my wife was sick and I thought I didn't have time for both?" "I remember," Marcus said. "You told me that the club wasn't just about riding motorcycles. It was about having people who'd be there when your world was falling apart. People who'd sit with you in hospital waiting rooms, who'd help with medical bills, who'd make sure your kids were fed and safe when you couldn't do it yourself." Tim met Marcus's eyes. My wife beat the cancer, and a big part of why she did was because I wasn't carrying that burden alone. Your club, our club, made that possible. Your point? Marcus asked, though he thought he knew. My point is that Ethan's world has fallen apart. He needs people to help carry that burden. And if we're not willing to be those people, then what the hell are we doing calling ourselves a brotherhood? Tim clapped Marcus on the shoulder. You didn't make a mistake, Marcus. You did the right thing. Now we've just got to see it through. As Tim walked to his motorcycle, Marcus felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. He wasn't alone in this decision. The club was behind him, which meant they'd face whatever came next together. Inside the house, he found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table with Rachel and Jennifer, eating pancakes and talking quietly. The boy looked up as Marcus entered, and there was something different in his expression, still scared, still uncertain, but with a small spark of hope that hadn't been there yesterday. These are really good pancakes, Ethan announced. Told you I could cook, Marcus said with a smile. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. CPS inspection scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Background check came back clean. You're approved for extended temporary placement if inspection passes. Also, Linda Parker is awake and asking about Ethan. Thought you'd want to know. Marcus read the text, then looked at Ethan. How would you feel about visiting your mum this afternoon? The doctor says she's awake and asking for you. Ethan's face lit up. Really? Can we? We can, Marcus confirmed. Eat up, get dressed, and we'll head to the hospital. As Ethan dug back into his pancakes with renewed enthusiasm, Rachel caught Marcus's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Marcus just nodded. He didn't need thanks. He needed to keep this kid safe, to help him rebuild something resembling a normal life, and to make sure Craig Donovan faced justice for what he'd done. The road ahead was going to be long and complicated. But the Desert Riders had faced difficult roads before. They'd face this one too, 1 mile at a time. Phoenix General Hospital's intensive care unit had a different energy than the emergency room. Quieter, more controlled, with an undercurrent of tension that came from knowing every patient in these rooms was fighting for their life in one way or another. Marcus walked beside Ethan down the sterile hallway, Rachel on the boy's other side, their footsteps muffled by the industrial carpeting. Ethan had been quiet during the drive over, staring out the window of Marcus's truck with an expression that was hard to read. Nervous maybe, hopeful, scared. Probably all three mixed together. Remember what we talked about? Rachel said gently as they approached Linda Parker's room. Your mom's getting better, but she's still healing. She might look a little different than you remember. There are bandages and machines to help her breathe and monitor her heart. That's all normal. It doesn't mean anything bad. I know, Ethan said, but his hand reached out to grab Rachel's, small fingers curling around hers. Linda was awake when they entered, propped up in bed at a slight angle. The swelling in her face had gone down somewhat since yesterday, but the bruises had darkened overnight, deep purples and blacks that made Marcus's jaw clench. Her right eye was swollen shut, and her jaw was wired, making speech difficult. But her good eye tracked to the doorway immediately, and when she saw Ethan, something broke in her expression. "Mom," Ethan whispered, letting go of Rachel's hand to rush to the bedside. "Mom, I'm so glad you're okay." Linda reached out with her left hand, her right arm was in a cast, and touched Ethan's face with gentle fingers, as if reassuring herself that he was real, that he was there. Tears slipped from her eye, running down her bruised cheek. "Hey, Mrs. Parker," Marcus said softly from the doorway. "I'm Marcus Thompson. We spoke briefly yesterday, though you might not remember much of it. This is Rachel Carter. We're the ones taking care of Ethan for now." Linda's gaze shifted to them, and Marcus saw wariness there beneath the gratitude. He understood it. Trusting strangers with your child when you'd just escaped an abusive relationship wasn't easy. "We'll give you two some time to talk," Rachel said, gently steering Marcus back toward the door. "We'll be right outside if you need us, Ethan." In the hallway, Marcus leaned against the wall, watching through the window as Ethan pulled a chair close to his mother's bed, talking animatedly while Linda listened, nodding occasionally, her hand still touching his face or his shoulder, as if needing constant physical confirmation of his presence. "She's terrified," Rachel observed quietly. "Not of us necessarily, but of what comes next. She's probably thinking about how she's going to protect Ethan when she can barely protect herself." "We'll figure it out," Marcus said. "Will we?" Rachel turned to look at him. "What happens if they find Donovan? If he goes to trial? Linda and Ethan will have to testify, which means reliving all of this. And if the Iron Fists really are involved, if they decide to pressure Linda into silence, then we make sure she knows she's not alone," Marcus said firmly. "We give her options, resources, support, whatever it takes." Sarah Mitchell appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels clicking on the linoleum. She looked tired, like she'd been up all night, and when she reached them, she didn't bother with pleasantries. "We've got a problem," Sarah said without preamble. "A big one." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What kind of problem?" Sarah glanced toward Linda's room, then gestured for them to follow her to a more private area. They ended up in a small conference room, typically used for family consultations with doctors. "2 hours ago, one of our patrol units spotted Craig Donovan's truck at a rest stop off I-10, about 20 miles west of Phoenix," Sarah began. "By the time backup arrived, Donovan was gone again, but they found something in the truck. A burner phone with recent calls to a number we've traced back to Axel Reaper McKenzie." Marcus felt ice slide down his spine. "Reaper's the president of the Iron Fists Phoenix chapter." "Correct," Sarah confirmed, "which confirms our suspicion that Donovan's got backing from them. But it gets worse. We've intercepted chatter, nothing we can use in court, but reliable intel that suggests Donovan's trying to get Ethan back." "Like hell," Rachel said, her voice sharp. "His rationale, according to what we've pieced together, is that if he can get Linda to drop the charges, and if he has Ethan as leverage, he can make this whole thing go away," Sarah explained. "He doesn't understand, or doesn't care, that this has moved beyond Linda's control. The state is prosecuting based on the evidence of child abuse. Linda's cooperation isn't required." "But he doesn't know that," Marcus said slowly. "He thinks if he can control the family, he can control the outcome." "Exactly, which makes Ethan a target." Sarah's expression was grim. "I've requested additional patrol presence in your neighborhood, Marcus, and I've flagged your address as a priority response location. But I can't give you round-the-clock police protection. I don't have the budget or the personnel." "We don't need police protection," Marcus said. "We've got our own security measures." "Against a 1%er club?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, I know you and your people are capable, but the Iron Fists are a different breed. They don't fight fair. They'll use intimidation, violence, whatever it takes, and they've got numbers." "So do we," Marcus said, "and we've got something they don't. Motivation. That kid in there, he came to us for help. We're not going to let him down." Sarah sighed, rubbing her temples. "I knew you'd say that, which is why I'm giving you this." She pulled out a small card and handed it to Marcus. "That's my personal cell number and the direct line to our emergency tactical unit. If you see anything suspicious, if Donovan or anyone associated with the Iron Fists makes contact, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." "Agreed," Marcus said, pocketing the card. "There's one more thing," Sarah said, her tone shifting slightly. "I spoke with Patricia Henderson from CPS. The home inspection tomorrow is still on, but she wanted me to convey that Linda Parker has verbally consented to Ethan remaining in your care for the time being. That doesn't override CPS's authority, but it does carry weight. If the inspection goes well, you could have Ethan for up to 6 months while Linda recovers and we sort out the criminal case." 6 months, Rachel repeated. That's a long time. It's also not long enough to fully heal from trauma like this, Marcus observed. But it's a start. It's more than a start, Sarah said. It's a lifeline for both of them. She glanced at her watch. I need to get back to the station. Remember what I said. Anything suspicious, you call me. After Sarah left, Marcus and Rachel stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything settling over them like the Arizona heat. We're really doing this, Rachel said quietly. Taking on the iron fists, protecting a kid we barely know, potentially harboring him for 6 months. Having second thoughts? Marcus asked. Rachel smiled, but there was steel in it. Not even a little. I'm just processing. This is bigger than a charity toy drive or helping a veteran find housing. This is life and death, which is exactly why we can't walk away, Marcus said. They returned to Linda's room to find Ethan still sitting beside his mother's bed, holding her hand. Linda's good eye tracked to them as they entered, and Marcus saw something in her expression shift. A decision being made. Thank you, Linda managed through her wired jaw. The words slurred but clear enough. Her gaze held Marcus's, then Rachel's. For protecting my boy. You don't need to thank us, Mrs. Parker, Rachel said softly. You just focus on getting better. Ethan's safe with us. Linda's eye filled with tears again. She turned to Ethan, squeezing his hand. Be brave. Listen to them. I will, Mom, Ethan promised. You just get better, okay? And then we can be together again. The drive back to Marcus's house was quiet, Ethan lost in his own thoughts in the back seat. Rachel sat in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at the boy with concern. He's processing a lot, she said quietly to Marcus. Yeah, Marcus agreed. Kid's whole world just got turned upside down. He's going to need time. Back at the house, Marcus found messages from various club members checking in, offering support. Tim had texted, My wife's making lasagna for you guys. I'll drop it off tonight. Jennifer had sent, Got some age-appropriate books and a Nintendo Switch if Ethan wants something to do. Kevin had messaged, Set up a counseling appointment for Wednesday. Child psychologist named Dr. Emma Reeves. She's good with trauma cases. The Desert Riders were mobilizing, each member contributing what they could. It reminded Marcus of his military days, that sense of collective purpose, of everyone pulling in the same direction. That evening, as the sun finally began its descent and the temperature dropped from unbearable to merely oppressive, Marcus sat on his back patio with Ethan. The boy was playing with a handheld video game Jennifer had dropped off, his small face illuminated by the screen's glow. Marcus, Ethan said suddenly, not looking up from the game. Yeah, buddy? What happens if Craig finds us? The question was asked in a small voice, matter of fact, like he was asking about the weather. Marcus considered his answer carefully. He'd promised himself he wouldn't lie to this kid. Then we handle it. Together. You, me, Rachel, and the whole club. He won't get to hurt you again, Ethan. I promise you that. But what if... No what ifs, Marcus interrupted gently. Here's what I know for sure. You're safe right now. You're fed, you're warm, you've got a roof over your head, and you've got people who care about what happens to you. Tomorrow, we'll deal with tomorrow's problems. Tonight, you get to just be a kid. Play your game, eat some of Tim's wife's lasagna, and get a good night's sleep. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Okay, Marcus echoed. As night fell over Phoenix, as the city's lights began to sparkle in the distance and the desert cooled under a blanket of stars, Marcus allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. That they could keep Ethan safe, help Linda recover, and see justice done. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake Sarah's warning. The Iron Fists didn't play by the rules. And Craig Donovan, backed into a corner with nothing to lose, was dangerous. The storm was coming. Marcus could feel it in his bones, in the way the wind had shifted direction, in the unnatural stillness that preceded violence. They just had to be ready when it hit. The CPS inspection on Monday afternoon went better than Marcus had dared to hope. Patricia Henderson arrived at exactly 2 p.m., accompanied by her supervisor, a stern woman named Angela Torres, who looked like she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. They went through the house room by room, checking smoke detectors, inspecting the refrigerator for adequate food, examining the spare bedroom that Marcus had hastily converted into a space suitable for an 8-year-old. Jennifer had helped with that, bringing over dinosaur-themed bedding, a small bookshelf, and posters of Spider-Man and the Arizona Cardinals. "The room is appropriate," Angela noted, making marks on her tablet. "Does the child have his own clothing?" "Basic wardrobe purchased yesterday," Rachel explained, gesturing to the dresser where Danny's Target haul was neatly folded. "We're waiting to get more until we know his preferences and what fits properly." Angela moved through her checklist with clinical efficiency, asking about Marcus's employment. Stable, 10 years at the same construction management firm. His criminal background, clean except for a speeding ticket from 2019. His support network, extensive through the club. His experience with children, limited personally, but surrounded by club members with kids. When the inspection was complete, Angela and Patricia conferred quietly in the kitchen while Marcus, Rachel, and Ethan waited on the patio. Ethan was pressed against Marcus's side, nervous energy radiating from his small frame. "They're going to say no," Ethan whispered. "They're going to make me leave." "Hey," Marcus said firmly but gently. "Whatever they decide, we're going to handle it. But I think you're worrying for nothing. We did everything right." Patricia emerged first, and there was the ghost of a smile on her face. "Mr. Thompson, Ms. Carter, could you come inside for a moment?" Marcus felt Ethan's hand grab his. "Can I come too?" "Of course," Patricia said. Inside, Angela stood with her arms crossed, her expression still unreadable. But when she spoke, her voice had softened slightly. "Mr. Thompson, I'm not going to lie to you. When Patricia first told me about this situation, I had significant reservations. Placing a traumatized child with a motorcycle club member isn't exactly standard protocol." Marcus felt his stomach sink. "However," Angela continued, "after reviewing your background, inspecting your home, and speaking with Detective Mitchell, I'm satisfied that you can provide adequate temporary care. The placement is approved for 90 days initially, with the possibility of extension pending ongoing evaluations." Relief flooded through Marcus like cool water. Beside him, Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding. "There are conditions," Patricia added, pulling up a document on her tablet. "Weekly check-ins with me, bi-weekly home visits. Ethan must attend all scheduled medical appointments and begin counseling immediately. Any changes in living situation must be reported within 24 hours. And if Craig Donovan is located, additional security measures may be required." "Understood," Marcus said. "We'll comply with everything." "I believe you will," Angela said, and this time she definitely smiled. "You're doing a good thing here, Mr. Thompson. That boy needs stability and safety, and from what I can see, you're providing both." After they left, Marcus knelt down to Ethan's level. "You hear that, buddy? You get to stay." Ethan's face crumpled, and then he was crying again. But these were different tears. Relief, joy, release. Marcus pulled the boy into a hug, feeling small arms wrap around his neck and hold on tight. "Thank you," Ethan sobbed into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "You don't have to keep thanking me," Marcus said softly. "This is what family does." The relative peace lasted exactly 3 more days. On Thursday evening, Marcus was in his workshop in the converted garage, showing Ethan how to sand a piece of wood for a birdhouse they were building together. Rachel was inside making dinner. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that rivaled the club's colors. That's when Marcus's phone rang. Sarah Mitchell's number. "Sarah," Marcus answered, feeling his chest tighten. He knew that tone. It was her cop voice, the one that meant bad news. "Marcus, we've got a situation. Donovan just walked into Iron Fist's clubhouse on the west side. We've had it under surveillance since this whole thing started. He's inside now, and based on what we're seeing, he's asking for help." "How long until you move in?" Marcus asked, his mind already racing through scenarios. "We can't. We don't have a warrant for the clubhouse, and he hasn't committed any new crimes that would justify immediate arrest on the property. The best we can do is watch and wait for him to leave." Sarah paused. "Marcus, I'm telling you this because you need to be prepared. If the Iron Fists decide to help Donovan, things could escalate quickly." "Define escalate," Marcus said, though he already knew. "They could try to intimidate you into giving up Ethan. They could make threats against the club. In a worst-case scenario, they could try to take the boy by force." Sarah's voice was tight. "I've got units on standby, but you need to activate your security protocols now." Marcus ended the call and immediately texted the club's group chat, code red. "Iron Fists potentially mobilizing. Need all hands at my location within the hour. This is not a drill." Within 45 minutes, Marcus's property had been transformed into a fortress. 8 motorcycles lined the driveway. Tim and Danny had positioned themselves at the front entrance. Victor and Kevin were covering the back. Jennifer and 2 other members, Robert Doc Harrison and Michelle Blaze O'Connor, were inside with Rachel and Ethan. Marcus briefed everyone on the situation, his voice calm but firm. "We're not looking for a fight, but if they bring one to us, we're ready. Primary objective is protecting Ethan. Everything else is secondary." "What if they just show up to talk?" Victor asked. "Then we talk," Marcus said. "But we talk from a position of strength with numbers, and we don't give an inch." Ethan sat on the couch inside, surrounded by club members who were trying to keep things light despite the tension. Jennifer was showing him magic tricks. Michelle was teaching him a card game, but the boy wasn't stupid. He could feel the atmosphere, could see the way the adults kept glancing toward the windows. "Marcus?" Ethan called out quietly. Marcus came inside, crouching beside the couch. "What's up, buddy? Is Craig coming here?" Ethan's voice was small but steady. Marcus made a decision in that moment. No lies, no false reassurances. "We don't know. But if he does, he's not getting anywhere near you, I promise." "I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me," Ethan said, and the guilt in his voice broke Marcus's heart. "Listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, taking the boy's hands in his own. "None of this is your fault. Not the abuse, not Craig being a monster, not this situation we're in now. None of it. You're the victim here, Ethan. You're the one who was brave enough to ask for help. And we're the ones who get to be brave enough to make sure you stay safe. That's not a burden on you. That's a privilege for us." Ethan nodded, tears tracking down his cheeks. Michelle handed him a tissue, and Jennifer squeezed his shoulder. The evening wore on. 9 p.m. became 10, 10 became 11. Marcus rotated his people through shifts, making sure everyone stayed alert. Coffee flowed freely. Tension hummed in the air like electricity. At 11:47 p.m., headlights appeared at the end of Marcus's street. "We've got company," Danny's voice came through the walkie-talkie network they'd established. 3 vehicles. Looks like, yeah, Iron Fist's patches. 8 individuals. Marcus moved to the front window, staying back from the glass. He could see the vehicles now. 2 pickup trucks and a motorcycle, all displaying Iron Fist's colors. They stopped at the end of the driveway, engines idling, not advancing, but making their presence known. "Sarah," Marcus said into his phone. "They're here." "Police are 3 minutes out," Sarah replied. "Do not engage unless they make the first move." A figure dismounted from the motorcycle, a tall, broad man with a shaved head and arms covered in tattoos. Axel Reaper Mackenzie, president of the Iron Fists Phoenix chapter. He walked halfway up the driveway, his hands visible and empty, then stopped. "Marcus Thompson," Reaper called out. His voice was deep, carrying easily in the quiet night. "Need to have a conversation. Just you and me, man to man." Marcus exchanged glances with Tim, who shook his head in warning, but Marcus knew that refusing to talk would only escalate things. "I'm coming out," Marcus said into the walkie-talkie. "Everyone stay alert, but hold positions." He stepped out onto his front porch, keeping one hand on the railing, very aware of the weight of his club members behind him, of Ethan inside, of the stakes involved. "Reaper," Marcus acknowledged. "This is private property. You've got about 2 minutes before Phoenix PD arrives in force." Reaper smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then I'll make this quick. You've got something that belongs to a friend of mine. If you're talking about Ethan Parker, he doesn't belong to anyone," Marcus said flatly. "He's a child under the temporary custody of Child Protective Services, currently placed in my care, legal and above board." "Craig Donovan is that boy's stepfather," Reaper said. "Legally, he's got rights." "Craig Donovan is a wanted felon with multiple felony charges pending, including aggravated assault and child abuse," Marcus countered. "The only right he has is the right to turn himself in and face justice." Reaper's expression hardened. "Donovan says there's been a misunderstanding. Says his wife and stepson are lying because they want him out of the picture. Says if he could just talk to the kid, they could work this out." "Then Donovan's a liar," Marcus said. "I've seen the medical reports. I've seen the bruises, the broken ribs, the evidence of systematic abuse. There's no misunderstanding. There's just a violent man who hurt a child and needs to face consequences." "You calling me a liar?" Reaper took a step forward. "I'm calling Donovan a liar," Marcus said, not moving. "What you choose to do with that information is your business. But that boy isn't going anywhere. And if you try to take him, you'll have to go through every person on this property and the police who are about to arrive." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Reaper studied Marcus for a long moment, and Marcus could see the calculation happening behind those cold eyes. Finally, Reaper smiled again, and this time it was genuine, the smile of a predator acknowledging worthy prey. "You've got balls, I'll give you that," Reaper said. "Standing up for some kid you barely know, risking a war with my club." "He's not some kid," Marcus said quietly. "He's under my protection. That makes him family, and I protect my family, no matter the cost." Police cars rounded the corner, lights flashing. Sarah's unmarked sedan was in the lead. Within seconds, the street was full of law enforcement, officers positioning themselves strategically. Reaper raised his hands in a gesture of peace, stepping back toward his vehicle. "This conversation ain't over, Thompson." "Yes, it is," Marcus said. "Go back to your clubhouse. Tell Donovan to turn himself in and stay away from my family." Reaper laughed, a sound like grinding gravel. "Your funeral, old man." He swung back onto his motorcycle, and the Iron Fists convoy pulled away, engines roaring in defiance. Sarah approached the porch, her expression tight with concern. "You okay?" "Fine," Marcus said, though his hands were trembling slightly with adrenaline. "They were sending a message." "Message received," Sarah said grimly. "I'm posting officers here for the night. Tomorrow we're going to talk about long-term security measures." Inside, Marcus found Ethan sitting exactly where he'd left him, surrounded by protective club members. The boy's eyes were wide, frightened. "Are they gone?" Ethan whispered. "They're gone," Marcus confirmed, sitting beside him. "And they're not coming back." "You don't know that," Ethan said, and the hopelessness in his voice was devastating. "You're right," Marcus admitted. "I don't know that for sure. But here's what I do know. We're not going to let them take you. We're not going to let Craig hurt you again. and we're going to fight every single day to make sure you're safe and that your mom gets better and that you get the life you deserve. That's not a maybe, that's a promise. Ethan looked around at the faces surrounding him, Rachel and Jennifer and Tim and Danny and Victor and all the others. Why are you all doing this for me? It was Rachel who answered, her voice soft but firm. Because everyone deserves to have people who stand up for them. Because abuse thrives in silence and darkness, and we choose to be loud and visible. Because you're a brave, strong kid who asked for help, and we're honored to be the ones who get to give it. She paused. And because you're ours now, Ethan. Maybe not by blood or law yet, but by choice, and that makes you family. The days that followed were tense but gradually stabilized. Sarah and her team finally arrested Craig Donovan 3 days later when he tried to withdraw money from an ATM, a rookie mistake that ended his time on the run. He was remanded to custody without bail, facing charges that would likely put him away for decades. The Iron Fist surprisingly backed off. Marcus later learned through Sarah's sources that Reaper had cut ties with Donovan after learning the full extent of the abuse. Even criminal motorcycle clubs had lines they wouldn't cross, and hurting kids was apparently one of them. Linda Parker was released from the hospital after 2 weeks. Marcus and the club helped set her up in a small apartment in a safe neighborhood, far from her old life. She cried when she saw what they'd done, furnished the place, stocked the kitchen, even set up a bedroom for Ethan for when she was well enough to have him back. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you," Linda said, her jaw finally unwired, though her speech was still slightly slurred. "You don't repay family," Marcus said simply. "You just pay it forward." Ethan started counseling with Dr. Emma Reeves, making slow but steady progress. The nightmares decreased in frequency. He smiled more. He started calling Marcus's house home without realizing it. On a Tuesday evening, 6 weeks after that fateful encounter at the gas station, Marcus and Ethan were back in the workshop, putting the finishing touches on the birdhouse they'd been building. Ethan carefully painted the roof blue while Marcus held it steady. "Marcus," Ethan said, focused on his painting. "Yeah, buddy? When Mom's all better and I go live with her again, can I still visit you? And Rachel and Danny and everyone?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Absolutely. You're part of this family now, Ethan. That doesn't change no matter where you live. You'll always have a place here." "Good," Ethan said, and his smile was bright and genuine. "Because I think of you kind of like a dad, I guess. Or at least how I imagine a dad would be." Marcus had to set down his paintbrush because his hands were shaking. He pulled Ethan into a hug, this boy who'd stumbled into his life asking to be arrested, who'd somehow become one of the most important people in his world in just 6 weeks. "I think of you like a son," Marcus said quietly, "in all the ways that matter." As the Arizona sun set once again, painting the sky in those familiar shades of orange and red, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought them here, about a desperate child who'd mistaken bikers for police, about a club that had chosen to stand up and be counted, about found family and the difference between right and legal, and how sometimes you had to choose one over the other. Craig Donovan would go to prison, Linda Parker would heal, Ethan would grow up surrounded by people who chose to protect him, and the Desert Riders MC would continue their mission, not just riding motorcycles through the desert, but being the kind of people who said yes when someone asked for help, who stood between the vulnerable and those who would do them harm, who understood that family wasn't about blood, but about who showed up when it mattered most. In the distance, the sound of motorcycle engines rumbled as other club members arrived for their weekly meeting. Tim's truck pulled up, his wife carrying another casserole. Jennifer arrived with more books. Victor brought pizza. This was family, loud, unconventional, leather-clad, motorcycle-riding family. And it was exactly what Ethan had needed all along. not to be arrested, but to be found.